today we are looking at a book which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, one of the very famous books on personal finance. So I will quickly take you through the gist of what the book is all about. And of course, I would persuade each one of you to buy it and read it if you have not read it already. So this book was first published in 1997. And the overarching theme of this book is how to make money as a tool for wealth development. Okay, it's a very interesting book because one, the name itself is so catchy. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Very interesting, right? And it destroys certain myths that you and I carry. One is that the myth that rich are born rich. They may be. I'm not denying that. But it also talks about how you and I can also become rich, despite the fact that we may not be born rich. Two, it also talks about personal residence may not actually be an asset. And I'll touch upon this in my next slide. So if you were to look at his book, basically he talks about Rich Dad and Poor Dad. The poor dad is actually his biological father. Okay. So his biological father is highly qualified, very well educated. And he believes in the principle that you must study hard so that you get good grades. And this is what typically has happened with all of us when we were children, especially with South India. This is a given that parents always keep talking, study, right? And you study hard, get good grades so that you get a good job, a well-paying job. Despite all of this, his poor dad did not do financially well, which basically talks of the fact that your qualification, your profession, your job may not guarantee wealth creation. Please remember, I'm using the word wealth creation. Your good grades, your good job, your profession, your job title could perhaps guarantee good income. Okay, you may be earning well, but you may not necessarily create wealth. That's what it is. And I also use this in many of my topics when I do behavioral finance. I emphasize on this point, and that is what Robert Kiyosaki also clearly mentions in his book. The rich dad is the father of his best friend, who happens to be an 8th grade dropout, not qualified, did not study well. But this dad believed in financial education, not just academic education. He believed in financial education. And therefore, this theme was to look at how money works and how to make it work. So, for example, I gave that example of Tina and Meena. Liquid fund is a smart way of making your money work, isn't it? Instead of lying in a savings account. And he becomes a millionaire. So, this is a contrasting story of both the parents. And if you look at the book, he talks about 6 lessons that he has learned from his rich dad about making money. And he also talks about the mistakes made by his poor dad. So, that's also important, right? So, for example, if you want good health, you should know what are the foods that you're supposed to eat, but you should also, equally important, that you also know what to avoid. Similarly, what are the lessons that he has learned from his rich dad, and what are the mistakes made by his poor dad, so that you and I don't make the same mistakes, right? And then he also talks about in his book 5 obstacles to overcome to become rich, and importantly stay rich. Okay, it's not just about becoming rich, it is also important to stay rich. So what are the obstacles that have to be overcome to become that and stay there? And there are 10 steps that he talks about in his book to develop your financial genius. Okay, so this is in a nutshell what the book is all about, and these are some of the lessons from his book, basically the topics or chapters. So the chapter 1 talks about the rich don't work for money. And he uses the quote that the poor and the middle class work for money, the rich have money, work for them. Very important quote. Okay. Second is why teach financial literacy. Talks about the difference between asset and liability. And most of us, when we learned assets and liabilities, we were taught that assets are those which increase in value. Liabilities are those which reduce in value. He talks about an additional point, I think, which is what Mr. Sagar also talked about, that assets produce income and they also appreciate. So they produce income, they appreciate. Liabilities take the money out of your pocket. So that is why he also talks about our own personal real estate. The house that we stay in may not be an asset because you're living in that house and it's not producing an income for you, right? Third, he talks about mind your business, which is basically look at yourself, try to pay off your debts as much as possible, be zero debt, and start investing in assets which can produce income. Then he talks about the concept of taxes, a very beautiful way. He says that between salaried versus business owners, which is self-employed, the equation is very important to understand. So companies, business owners, self-employed. The formula is earn, you spend, then you pay tax, because that spending can be taken as an expenditure in the business. So you're left with very little amount of taxes to be paid. You and I are salaried employees. We work for companies. We also earn, but we pay tax because there's a TDS that already goes. And then what remains, we spend. Isn't it so beautiful? So self-employed people have the flexibility that they can structure their expenses. So the equation is beautiful: earn, spend, and then pay tax. If something remains, you pay tax. Otherwise, you don't even pay tax. You and I have no choice because there's a TDS. So there's a tax that you earn, you pay a lot of the tax, and then what you get in hand, we know, right? And then he talks about the rich invent money. They identify opportunities that other people have not found, and they work with intelligent people. And then he also talks about work to learn. Again, very interesting. It's not learn to work, it is work to learn, which means you don't work for money. Identify skills that you want to acquire before you choose a profession. Most of us have landed in the profession, isn't it? By default. He says choose a profession. And before that, you identify what skills you want so that you become the earner, maximum earner in that profession. That's how you look at your thought process, right? And of course, he talks about overcoming obstacles, how to get started. And there's a to-do list also that he provides. So my strong suggestion, please read this book. It is now available in multiple languages. I don't know if it's available in Tamil, but I've definitely seen it in Hindi and Marathi, and of course English is there, right? So this is where I would want to stop. I think thank you all of you for your time and for patiently listening to me.
If you have any questions related to this or any other investment options or related to your financial goals, feel free to book a free appointment with our financial planner. The link to the free booking is given in the description below this video. Also, will you be interested to attend insightful investment webinars? Then feel free to register for our upcoming insightful enlightening investment webinar, and it is completely free. The registration link for the upcoming webinar is also given in the description box. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Also share it in your social circle. If you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel so far, please subscribe now. Bye.